Despite the popularity of the concept of green economy among international and national policy programs, its usefulness as a pathway to sustainability has been questioned. There's the question of the operationality of the green economy concept as regards its ability to achieve a transition towards sustainability and the framework for its implementation and monitoring, which are still currently lacking, especially in Africa. I'm Tonya Gubanjo, and this is Policy on the Go. Today we'll be discussing the seemingly utopian dream of the pathway towards the green African economy. Joining us on the program is Etta Michael, an environmentalist who joins the conversations virtually on bridging the gaps that we see in the political space as regards environmental sustainability. Mr. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. It's good to have you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here, and I look forward to having a lovely conversation on this platform. Thank you.
In charting the course towards a green economy, one major means of achieving this is a government policy. But we see that there is almost political indifference. There's a lack of political will when it comes to policies on environmental sustainability. Why is this? Why is it that it seems as though in the political space, not much thought is given into green economic policies? Why?
All right. Thank you very much. Like I said, I look forward to having a very lovely conversation on this platform, which you have given me that privilege by setting the agenda. So when you talk about policy implementation and political will, so what Joanna asks is because I know for sure that we have lots of policies that are supposed to help us to be able to regulate or enforce environmental sustainability. That I'm very, very sure, which of course most of them I'm going to mention them in the course of this conversation. But back again, the question of Nana is if we do have all these policies, why are they not being implemented? Why are we still experiencing, environmental degradation? Why are people, why are Nigerians not living that culture of sustainability? Because it's that culture that will take us to that transition we all look up to, which they call green. Okay, so I think it's something that has to do with enlightenment. Because, for example, if you look at the Climate Change Act 2021, okay, it's in there that as a matter of policy, there's need for public education, meaning that the government is supposed to bring people together, sensitize citizens, explain to them the content of that act. But the question I now ask is, has that been done? So it's not about the policy, it's about the implementation of all these policies. So I think for me, there's need for mass education, civil education, for people to actually understand what all these things say. One is a policy, what constitutes policy? For example, if the public don't understand, all of that, I don't think they can be called to action because your question now is tied to the fact that why are we not seeing that action with regards to these policies? So I think there's need for mass public education for them to understand all of this and then to enable them to empower them to be able to make demands because those demands that will not lead to that implementation that will bring about the result I think we are talking about here.
Okay. Yes, so I'm talking about political actions. Nigeria celebrated recently their 64th year of independence. And, as is the practice, the president of the country, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he delivered a 23-minute speech, very long, which was packed with a lot of things. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'll be focusing on what he mentioned. He spoke about the energy sustainability program. He said that this was going to be expanded. There was going to be expansion of the presidential initiative for CNG. So, that's one of the things we can say they're doing as regards environmental sustainability. So we want you to enlighten us. What are the environmental benefits of this CNG, especially for the common man? What does this mean to the common man that, what's on his mind is what he's going to eat today? And at the very least, there's fuel hike. A lot of people are struggling when it comes to getting fuel from the stations. We have people even leaving their cars parked there. They would rather go for public transport than, stay on that queue and get fuel. So, but now the president has announced that there's going to be an adoption of this CNG initiative. It's going to be expanded. So what does this mean for Nigeria, to the common man on the street that is facing this fuel hike? What environmental benefits can we expect from this?
So I think the benefit will come in form of emission reduction, which is the ultimate target when it comes to
Yeah.
carbon decarbonization. Basically, that's like will be like if it is well implemented, it will be about the reduction of fossil fuel. Okay, but the question now is before we how do we achieve that? Okay, because one thing is to say it, is to say it's for the government to, like you asked, in your intro. I mean, why is it that we're not seeing a result, even though we have all these policies? Why do we still experience degradation? Why are we not sustainable in our practices, even though we have all these policies? So it goes back to the same thing again. So how do we achieve what the president has just said? That's for me, that's just like one of those policy statements. It's a good initiative, but how to achieve that? There are processes, there are action has to do with activities, with engagement, with things being on the ground. It's beyond just saying it, okay? Taking words, to the field. That's what action is. Now the president has said it, what's the follow up? But like you asked, if that happens, the benefit to the environment will be that there'll be huge reduction in carbon emission, which is the source of climate change. Okay,
Yes.
but now then, therefore, for the common man, I mean, it will mean that if we can keep in, it will mean that we're not living that culture of sustainability, because sustainability is all about carbon reduction. Okay, it's about watching our carbon footprint. It's about our lifestyle. So if we can, have access to all these things like the president has proposed and has made very clear. So I think for the common man, it will be also about living that culture of sustainability, which is the end goal of that transition. Yes,
Okay,
yes,
yeah,
I
so
can hear
like
you.
you,
Speak
you
on.
like you've alluded to sustainability. In defining sustainability, we usually say it's the ability to meet our present needs without, compromising those of the future generations to meet theirs. And then when we look at the situation of Africa as a whole, and even bringing it down to Nigeria, in using our, natural resources, it seems like there's been a lot of compromise. It begs the question of what exactly are we leaving for the future generations? What legacy do we have available? When the future Nigeria comes here, what are they going to meet the resources in good shape? How are they able to, maximally make use of them? What do we have in place for the future generations as regards our environment?
So with regards to environmental stewardship, if you can hear me, I think it's quite very worrisome with regards to what we are going to hand over to the third generation, because as it is right now, I mean, the science tells us that with the way we are going about, our lifestyle, is not sustainable. If you look at the Paris Agreement, which is the global treaty that is currently guiding, you know, the environmental activity in the world, you will see that they have told us very clearly that we are not living up to the expectations of that agreement, which is supposed to be like the guideline, like, you know, like the manual, for sustainability. So I think for the third generation, it's quite worrisome with the kind of environment they're going to inherit. But it is my hope and my expectation that with all these conversations that are ongoing, for example, even we having this discussion by itself, it's part of the solution. I mean, it's for people to actually understand that this is the depth of the crisis, and that for the future generation, I mean, they have to be mobilized, because when we talk about environmental stewardship, we're talking about environmental justice. So
Yes.
there's actually an injustice that is being perpetrated by the present generation against the future generation. And it's something I think they need to know to enable them, mobilize and demand for their rights. So I think for me, it's about mobilizing young people, to empower them, to equip them with the knowledge they need to demand for environmental justice. Otherwise, I'm scared. I'm really, really scared, because As it is right now, like I said, I don't see us. And I'm very glad with the way you asked your initial question. We have all these policies.
Yes.
So why are we not getting results? So that by itself tells you that there's something beyond just having policies alone. Okay. So for me, I think public education, like I mentioned, and that's why for me as a journalist and as a climate advocate, I've always tried to focus on building the capacity of stakeholders and engaging young people and the public, you know, to have that knowledge because it's something that is knowledge driven. Okay, environmental sustainability, or you call it climate change, or you call it just transition, these leaders are knowledge driven, and there are things that in the public, if people don't understand what they all represent, they can't even demand for their rights. So for me, it's about civic education, educating the public, whether the president wants to give them CNG, whether it's EBCs, whether it's whatever it is, what causes the climate to change is carbon emission, fossil fuel. That's what the science tells us. And they can trace the causes of all these emissions to our lifestyle. So for us to be able to avert all these crises, we need to reduce how, we need to reduce our carbon footprint basically, and then people need to know. It is knowledge that will help us achieve that goal. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so as you those things are quite important, but as you know, when we look at Africa as a continent and even bringing it down to Nigeria, it's a developing economy. There's still a need for us to, enhance our economy. There are needs for us to implement economic policies. So how do you think we can balance economic growth between environmental sustainability, in ensuring that while we're pushing for economic growth, the natural assets we have that maintain our well-being, they're not compromised. We ensure that while we're making maximum efforts of our environmental resources, we're still minimizing pollution and we're not leading into environmental damage. So how exactly do you think, the government is going to be able to balance this out in ensuring that while we're trying to develop the economy, we don't damage our environment?
Thank you very much for that question. I think that's where when you hear the word just transition, okay? The word just there represents the fact that whether it's the government, whether it's the private sector, or any other key stakeholder understands the fact that we have developed in a way that we cannot keep going like that. So when you hear the word sustainable development, I'm saying that we need to redefine growth. Okay.
Mm,
So talking about economic sustainability alongside ecological protection, what and that takes us back to what I said earlier on: civic education, public engagement. Okay. So, for example, in today's society, you cannot grow in today's economy. You cannot talk about economy today without talking about environmental conservation. So, the thing is that when you define what good is in today's world, you need to be able to tie that to environmental safeguard or what they call sustainability. Okay. So, for the government, it's for them now to start tying sustainable initiatives. Okay, like policies. I don't have any issue with government making policies. I don't,
mm,
because I know that we have policies in existence that can help us achieve some of these the goals of this program you've asked right now. But the challenge is in the issue of implementation. Okay, because as soon as you start enforcing those policies, you will be seeing physical results. So the physical result is tied to the action you take, not the action you say. Okay. So I think everything boils down to public education, people being able to, whether it's on the part of the government or the part of the society, there's need for that awareness so that if we're having an economic plan, for example, when the government is planning budget, let's say about 2025, okay, I mean, you can even see even in our politics, you know, you really hear, issues about the environment mentioned, even when it's mentioned
yes.
under pressure, but as key as, you can imagine that to be. Okay, so it starts from there. We
Mm,
need to have a definition of minds and views on how we see these issues. We need to acknowledge them as key development issues. Obviously, We are seeing them today all over the world. It's not only in Nigerian team.
Yes.
Nigeria is only a party to it, and then for us, it's for us to understand, accept it, and then start playing our role, start seeing ourselves from that perspective. Not where we are right now. Where we are right now, we just still feel, and then just take it as something that maybe like, I mean, of course, we saw what happened in Borno recently. It's not the flood in
Mm-hmm.
Borno.
Yes.
That's a telltale sign. I mean, so what else again? The evidence are real. We see them next year, that we flood again next year. So the signs are real. The question is, why do we always have to wait for the disaster, for the calamity to hit?
Yeah.
Why are we always on the responsive aspect of it, not proactive aspect of it? That's the problem. So that's part of the things we need to be doing, with regards to addressing the problem as against or even going beyond just policy formulators alone. Yeah.
Okay. We're taking a short break now, and when we come back, we'll delve more into the conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We've been having a conversation with Mr. Michael on operationalizing the green economic policies in Africa. Mr. Michael, thank you for staying with us. So now you've emphasized on implementation. That's what's most important. It's not just about the policies that we're bringing in. So how exactly do you think the Nigerian government can effectively, integrate these policies as well as ensuring that they implement them into the national development agenda? What exactly do you think they can do differently to push the implementation of these policies to ensure that, we can hopefully completely go green in Africa
Mhm.
and, even down to Nigeria. So what do you think can be done differently to push for the implementation of these green economic policies?
I talked about public education. There's need to build a capacity. There's need for great skills. Okay, there's need to train Nigerians. You know, there's need to prepare Nigerians for this transition. And how do you prepare them? You need to start training Nigerians. You need to empower Nigerians. On activities, on initiatives that will deliver this green economy. Green is not just a term. Okay, it's not just a word. When you say green, you're talking about event activities that will lead you to a destination. So Nigerians there's need for green skills in Nigeria. Our people need to be empowered, they need to be trained. And how one of the ways to achieve that is through public education. They need to be aware. Once they are aware, they will go for it. So the government needs to invest more, needs to work more with the private sector, the government needs to work more with the development partners, the government needs to work more with NGOs, the civil society, to prepare our people for this capacity building because it is that capacity they need. That capacity gap is what is lacking. And that's where we are. So there's need to bridge that gap. So the government needs to invest in preparing Nigerians by training them, okay, and investing into initiatives like solar energy, okay. We need to see
Yes.
a lot of yes, we need to see a lot of investment. We need to prepare Nigerians, to be able to, you know, leverage on such kind of. So it's about smart technologies. We need our people to be smart, okay, because that's what will take us to, like I said, where we are going to. That is just what we need. And until that time, it goes beyond politics. I can assure you, the government, I must commend them. They have done a lot with regards to putting up policies, frameworks and guidelines. But the truth is that we need to move beyond that for us to be able to bridge the gap you are seeking answers for. Yes.
Okay, so now, aside government, there's also a role that we as people play, especially in communities. What strategies do you think can be employed to ensure community involvement and participation in green economy initiatives, particularly in rural areas? So how exactly do you think even the people themselves can participate in these issues so that we don't just leave everything to the government? Because even at the very base level, we have our roles to play. So how exactly do you think we can integrate community participation to ensure environmental sustainability?
Okay, so I hear this always, okay, but the truth is that the government is the one that will lead. There must always be, it's not something that can be just left like that. There must be a coordinator, and the government is tasked with that responsibility of leading, okay? That's why in your intro, you started by even asking about policy. Okay,
Yes.
so it is policy, it is government is the one that will lead our framework for all of this to happen. Because if you don't do that, every other private effort, of course, people at work, communities have been working, I mean, individually, you have NGOs working in silos, but that impact has not been felt because it's in silos. So the government is the one through policy framework that will help us come up in a time with that guideline that communities, that other initiatives will fit into it. So that is sort of back to what I said earlier on. The government needs to sit up, take responsibility, and do what they need to do. And like I said, it's not a Nigerian issue. So for us as a country, it's how we are able to position ourselves for the just. Nobody wants just transition. So it is how you are able to prepare your people, your country, for this goal. It's the result you will get. So if we don't do what we should do, other countries are better prepared. I can assure you will transit and Nigeria will never achieve anything.
Okay, so now let's even look at the private sector. Do you think there's any role they can play to collaborate, to, secure funding for green economy projects? What role do you think private sectors can play as well? Do you think they can also, help in these issues?
The private sector they can play a very key role with regards to helping. In fact, they are the ones championing the process, not the government. Okay, so and I can assure that there's huge capital for the transition. So that takes us back to what I said earlier again. There's for the government to sit up, okay, how understand that this is something that has to do with development, okay, and then come up with the right policies that the private sector can key into. They are the ones with the finance. So the government needs to come up with a structure that they can put in their money to achieve the goal. So everything bounce back to the government. Okay. So for the private sector, I can assure you, they are always willing to come in. And they are even the ones that will drive the transition, not the government. So I will still tax the government again to ensure that some of these policies, like I said, some of them are in existence. Those who are in existence should be fully enforced. And then where will it more to come in? Let us come up with those new policies and get, because one of the tax, one of the challenges is that the private sector cannot bring in the investment where there's no clarity. And I can assure you some of these government policies are not too clear. They're not private sector, attractive. They don't clearly explain where the investment will come from. Okay, so or maybe like the top investment will come from. Okay. So I think it's achievable, but it's just for like I am still proposing for the government to be able to understand, like do what it ought to do, put up the right policies, the ones that we have right, implement them. It is the implementation that we refer to as action. Once we can implement an effort, we will still get results. We must get results.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Michael, for joining us. That's about the questions that we have for you today. Do you have any final words for the people that are watching us? Any words of advice to ensure that they also participate in this issue?
Okay, so the truth is that as an expert in this space, I mean, one of the things I try to do with my knowledge is that I try to help, share my little knowledge with Nigerians to help them understand that issue of every personality, they are real. They're not things you can, they're not things you cannot explain. That most of them are intangible. They're not things you can see with your eyes, but they do exist. Okay, so despite the recklessness we see, whether on the part of the government or the part of the global community, and now I'm talking about the politicians now, I want our people to know that this crisis is real. And like if you ask, what kind of future are we going to be handing over to the next generation? A very worrisome future with the women about this today. So this
Yeah.
crisis is real, and I will urge our people to look beyond government weaknesses or the recklessness of the polluters, and then find a need in between the crisis, because at the end of the day, they are the victims, not even the polluters or the government. So, so my point is that there's need for, like earlier I said, there's need for public, engagement. There's need for public education. But where the government is failing, or the people are failing, the people themselves need to know that that education, that bridge needs to be, closed, because otherwise. But I can assure you, we might not be the actual victims of our action today. It's the future generation. But however
Yes,
it is, we owe
exactly.
them, we owe them that responsibility. And that was why I said there's need to mobilize young people to start demanding for this right. To start demanding because I mean, I'm over 40 years today, so I don't foresee myself living up to another 100 years again. But so the outcome of our this action will manifest maybe 100 years time, 200 years time. So I think there's need to protect that territory, and that's my call to do to our people. Yeah, thank you so much, Tony, and it's
Thank you
nice
so
to
much
be
for
on your show.
joining us. And that's it on the program today. As we conclude, ask yourself what you can do differently to contribute to a green economy in your country. The future is in our hands. Let's make sustainable choices to ensure a livable world. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Tony Ugubanjo. Till next time.